Chapter 1. The Arrival. The invitation came on a stormy afternoon, tucked between a pile of ordinary correspondence. Its simple envelope, a stark contrast to the typical letters Lena Ashford received. No return address, only the name Ashford Manor, written in an elegant but unrecognizable script. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tore open the envelope, revealing a single piece of parchment, aged and brittle. The words were brief, but the message was clear. The past is waiting for you to uncover it. Come alone. Lena stared at the words for a long time. A chill ran down her spine. It was not just the letter's cryptic nature that unnerved her, but the memory of the manor itself. Ashford Manor was a place she had avoided for years. It had once been the heart of her family's legacy, but it had grown silent after the sudden and unexplained death of her father. Years ago, her mother had insisted the estate be left to rot, as if cutting ties with the manor was the only way to cut ties with the painful past. Lena had been away in Paris when she'd received the news, unable to attend the funeral. Now, she was back in England, her life filled with strange coincidences that she couldn't ignore. She stood in front of her reflection, examining herself in the mirror. A woman in her early 30s, still youthful, yet with eyes that spoke of loss and mystery. Lena had always carried herself with quiet dignity, but there was something about the letter that unsettled her. She had never been particularly superstitious, but the thought of returning to the manor, where family secrets had festered for generations, left her anxious. Yet, as the evening drew near, the decision was made. She packed a small suitcase, hesitating only momentarily as she glanced at the ticket in her hand. Ashford Manor awaited, and whether she liked it or not, it was pulling her in. The journey to Ashford Manor. Lena's car was an old model, its engine sputtering as she drove through the fog-covered roads leading to the estate. The further she drove, the more the world around her seemed to shrink. Dark trees, tangled branches, and paths that twisted and turned like the secrets she was about to face. When the silhouette of Ashford Manor emerged in the distance, it looked like something out of a Gothic novel, its stone walls rising like giants, windows like watchful eyes, and the ivy crawling up its sides like creeping fingers. It was a building that seemed to breathe, as if it had a life of its own. As she stepped out of her car and approached the grand doors, Lena felt the weight of her family's legacy pressing on her shoulders. The manor was eerily silent, no servants in sight, no sounds of movement within. The only sound was the whisper of the wind, carrying a scent of earth and decay. She knocked. Once, twice. The door creaked open with a shudder, revealing a dimly lit foyer. The place smelled of dust, ancient wood, and something else. Something faintly metallic, like iron left out in the rain. "Miss Ashford," a voice said behind her, startling her from her reverie. Lena turned to find a man standing in the doorway, a tall, thin figure with sharp features, dressed in a dark suit that seemed a bit too formal for the occasion. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something unsettling, something like recognition and wariness combined. "I was told to expect you," he continued, his voice low and smooth. Welcome back to Ashford Manor. Miss Ashford. Lena's pulse quickened. And you are? My name is Elliot Quinn. I was employed by your grandfather to oversee the property after his death. Are there others here? Lena asked, glancing behind him. He nodded. Yes, there are a few guests waiting for you inside. It seems your grandfather had arrangements that he never explained. Lena stepped across the threshold, the cold of the stone floors seeping into her bones. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Elliot's story than he was letting on. The mysterious guests inside the manor. The air was thick with the weight of history. The walls were lined with portraits of people Lena barely recognized, each one staring down at her with unblinking eyes. The candles on the chandeliers flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to dance across the room. Elliot led her to a large sitting room where the other guests were gathered, their eyes immediately drawn to her entrance. The first to speak was Vera Montgomery, an older woman with silvery hair, dressed in a long, tailored coat that looked out of place in the dusty room. Miss Ashford, she said, her tone cold but polite. I've been expecting you. Lena nodded cautiously. I don't believe we've met. I'm a distant relative, Vera replied. Your grandfather and I shared a fascination with family history, though I dare say he kept more secrets than any of us realized. A man sitting by the window, his sharp eyes watching Lena intently, introduced himself as Damien Hawke. He had the air of a local historian, someone who knew more about the manor and its legacy than he let on. He leaned forward, his voice quiet yet firm. The Ashfords have a long history here. Lena, your grandfather was involved in matters that the rest of us have only begun to understand. Lena shifted her gaze, unsettled by the cryptic tone of his words. Before she could respond, another figure entered the room, Mira Fields, a woman in her 30s, dressed in a simple black dress. She approached Lena with a measured look in her eyes. I am a private investigator, Mira said, holding out a business card. I was hired to ensure the safety of the manor and to uncover whatever secrets your grandfather may have left behind. It seems, Miss Ashford, that you and I may have more in common than you think. Lena raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Mira's lips curled into a faint smile. There are certain things here in this house that shouldn't be disturbed. Your grandfather's research and the people who have been involved with it. I'm afraid you've walked into something far more dangerous than you realize. The gathering storm. The atmosphere in the room grew heavier as Lena took in the words of each guest. It was clear that they all had an agenda, and it was not entirely in line with her own quest for answers. Elliot spoke up again, his voice soft but insistent. The truth. Miss Ashford, is that your grandfather didn't die of natural causes. He was murdered. The words hung in the air, thick with the weight of their implications. Lena blinked, trying to grasp the enormity of what Elliot had just said. Murdered. But who, why? Elliot's gaze darkened, and he glanced around the room. I'm afraid that's what we need to find out. But I suspect someone here knows more than they're letting on. Lena's stomach churned with a sudden, dreadful realization. The manor, its secrets, its ghosts were not just a relic of the past. They were very much alive, and they were about to reveal their dark truth. Chapter 2. The Guests. Lena sat down slowly, the weight of Elliot's words pressing on her chest. Murder. Her grandfather had been murdered. The revelation was too much to process, yet she knew it was true. Everything in the house seemed to whisper secrets, and for the first time, she felt as if the walls were closing in on her. The guests in the room remained silent, their eyes all trained on her, waiting. No one spoke. It was clear they each had their own agenda, and now they all shared a piece of a dangerous puzzle, one that Lena wasn't sure she was ready to solve. After a long, uncomfortable pause, she broke the silence. "What do you mean murdered?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in her mind. Elliot leaned forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've looked into it. Lena, your grandfather's death wasn't just a natural passing. He was involved in something deep. His research, his findings were too dangerous for some people, and those people didn't want him to finish it." Lena's heart raced. What research? What was he involved in? Vera Montgomery, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Your grandfather was obsessed with the Ashford legacy more than any of us ever realized. He dug into things that were meant to stay buried, ancient manuscripts, old family records, symbols that go back centuries, things that could change everything we thought we knew about our family's past." Damien Hawk chimed in, his voice low but firm. "The Ashfords are tied to power in ways most people don't understand. And when someone like your grandfather starts digging too deep into that power, it makes people nervous." Lena's mind raced. What was her grandfather uncovering? Why had he kept it secret? More importantly, why had someone felt the need to kill him before he could finish? "I don't understand," Lena said, her voice breaking. "Who would want to kill him for research?" What kind of research was it? Mira Fields, who had been observing the conversation with a neutral expression, finally spoke. "The kind that reveals the truth behind the Ashford curse." She said simply, "The truth that your grandfather was trying to expose." Lena's breath caught in her throat. "Curse, not a curse in the traditional sense." Mira continued, her tone unwavering. "But the Ashford family has been involved in dealings, some ancient, some recent, that have bound them to a series of unfortunate events. Your grandfather found out about it, and that's why he's dead. He was getting too close." Lena's head spun. A family curse. Power secrets that had been buried for generations. It was all too much to process in one sitting. But something in the pit of her stomach told her that this was only the beginning. The first clue. As the night wore on, the tension in the room mounted. The manor seemed to grow darker, its very walls heavy with secrets, and yet no one dared to move or speak too loudly. Each of them, from Elliot to Vera to Damien, had a hand in her grandfather's life, and each was here now, for reasons Lena wasn't sure she could trust. Finally, after what felt like hours of strained silence, Vera stood. "There is something I've been meaning to show you," she said, walking toward the grand fireplace. Her heels clicked sharply against the stone floor. "Something your grandfather left behind before his death." She moved a large portrait to reveal a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was an old leather-bound book, thick with dust and worn from age. It looked like something that hadn't been touched in decades. Lena felt a chill run through her as Vera handed her the book. "This," Vera said softly, "is the key. The key to everything. Your grandfather's research, his notes, and everything he found. You need to read it." Lena hesitated, her fingers brushing against the worn cover. She knew that whatever secrets this book contained, they would change everything. With a deep breath, she opened it. The first pages were filled with notes, written in her grandfather's hand, scribbled symbols, equations, and names of people Lena didn't recognize. But as she flipped through the pages, her eyes caught on something that sent a chill up her spine. A list of names, people who had all been connected to Ashford Manor. Going back hundreds of years, some were familiar, distant relatives and figures from Ashford history, but others were strangers, with no explanation of how they had been involved. Lena stopped at one name, written in bold ink, the architect. "The architect," she muttered, reading the name aloud. "Who is that?" Damien stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. "The architect is a shadow figure in Ashford history. No one knows their true identity. But they're the one who has been pulling the strings, the one who set this all in motion." Vera nodded grimly. "Your grandfather found them. Lena. He found out who they are, and that's why they killed him. He got too close." The gathering storm. As Lena stared at the pages before her, the pieces of the puzzle started to fit together. Her grandfather had been investigating something far bigger than she had imagined. Someone or something had been pulling the strings of Ashford history, controlling the family's fate for centuries. And whoever they were willing to kill to keep the truth buried. But the deeper Lena dug into the book, the more she realized that her grandfather hadn't just discovered the truth, he had become part of it. The research was not just academic. It was connected to the Ashford family's wealth, its power, and the dark forces that had always lurked in the shadows of the manor. The storm outside picked up, its howling winds rattling the windows, as if the house itself was alive. Watching Lena's every move, she closed the book, feeling its weight in her hands. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mira stepped forward, her eyes hard. "We finish what your grandfather started. We find out who the architect is, and we uncover the truth, no matter the cost." Elliot nodded, his face grim. "We're all in this together now. No one leaves until we have answers." Lena turned to face them all, her resolve hardening. She didn't know if she could trust them. But one thing was clear, she couldn't turn back now. The secrets of Ashford Manor had already begun to unravel, and the cost of uncovering the truth was rising with each passing moment. Chapter 3. The Secrets of the Manor. The night seemed to stretch on forever. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows of Ashford Manor as Lena carefully set the leather-bound book aside. The weight of the discovery pressed heavily on her. But it wasn't just the book. There was something more sinister in the air now. The house, once familiar, now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on her with each passing moment. The other guests were still gathered around, their faces drawn and tense. Lena could feel their eyes on her, as if they were waiting for her to make the next move. She glanced at Elliot. Vera, Damien, and Mira, each one had a reason for being here, but whether any of them were truly on her side was still uncertain. One thing was clear: they all wanted something from her. The question was, what? Lena's mind raced as she turned the book over in her hands. She couldn't ignore what had been written there. The architect. That name haunted her thoughts. What did it mean? Who were they? And why did her grandfather feel the need to expose them? The more she read, the more the pieces seemed to fall into place. But the picture it painted was one of unimaginable power, ancient pacts, and bloodshed. The architect, she muttered under her breath, looking up at the others. Who are they? Mira spoke first, her tone grim. The architect is a figure from Ashford history, someone who has been manipulating events for generations. They're not just a person. They represent an idea, a movement. The Ashfords have always been involved with them, whether they knew it or not. Manipulating what exactly? Lena asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Damien answered, his face shadowed with unease. The family's wealth, power, influence. They've made deals with unspeakable forces. The Ashford fortune wasn't built on hard work or good fortune. It was bought with blood, with promises made to dark forces long ago. And those promises are still being kept. Lena's pulse quickened. What kind of forces? What kind of deals? Vera interjected, her voice cold. The Ashfords made a pact centuries ago, before any of us were born. They traded their souls for power, for wealth that would last beyond their lifetimes. But every generation has paid the price. The curse is real. Lena, your grandfather was close to unraveling it. Lena's head spun as the weight of their words sunk in. A pact, a curse. Her family had been involved in something far darker than she had ever imagined. She had thought of Ashford Manor as just a house, a legacy left behind by her ancestors, but now it felt like a tomb, a place steeped in secrets too dark to bear. Elliot's voice cut through her thoughts. Your grandfather believed the curse was linked to the architect. He believed that if he could expose the truth, the family would be freed. But he was killed before he could finish his work. By the architect, Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No, Mira said, shaking her head. The architect didn't kill him, but the people behind the architect did. They're the ones who made sure your grandfather couldn't finish what he started. They're still out there, and they'll stop at nothing to keep the truth buried. A hidden room. The tension in the room was palpable as Lena absorbed the gravity of the situation. She had come here seeking answers, but now the answers were only raising more questions. The Ashford legacy was much more than she had ever imagined, and the people she thought she could trust were all tied up in the same web of darkness. We need to go deeper, Lena said, her voice firm. There has to be more to this manor, more answers hidden somewhere. My grandfather must have left more clues. Elliot looked at her with a mixture of admiration and caution. You're right. There is more, but it's not something that's easily found. It's buried deep within the manor, within the heart of the house. Lena stood up, determined. Then we start searching. We can't wait any longer. The others exchanged glances, but no one argued. They followed her as she moved toward the grand staircase. The sound of their footsteps echoing in the silence. They reached the top floor, where the manor's oldest rooms lay. untouched for decades. Lena led the group to her grandfather's old study. It had been locked since his death, and no one had dared to enter it. The door creaked as Lena pushed it open, revealing a room frozen in time. Dust lay thick on the desk, the shelves, the books. But as Lena stepped inside, something caught her eye, a faint outline on the wall, as if something had been moved recently. She walked over to the wall, her fingers tracing the edges of the hidden compartment. There was no sign of a lock, no indication that it had been opened before. But Lena knew that this was the place. Her grandfather had hidden something here. With a quiet click, the wall opened, revealing a small, dark room. Inside, there was a wooden chest, old and worn, with brass fittings. Lena's heart raced as she approached it, her fingers trembling as she unlocked the chest. Inside was a pile of yellowed papers, maps, and a small, intricate box. As she pulled the box from the chest, she saw it was covered in strange symbols, just like the ones in the book. This was it. This was what her grandfather had been trying to protect him. "Open it," Mira urged, her voice taut with anticipation. Lena hesitated for a moment before she carefully opened the box. Inside was a small, crystal-clear gemstone, glowing faintly in the dim light. It was beautiful and unnerving at the same time. The gemstone seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and for a moment, Lena felt as though it was calling to her. "That's it," Damien said, his voice low. "The key to everything." Lena stared at the gemstone in awe. This was the thing her grandfather had been trying to protect. It was the key to the Ashford legacy, to the curse, and to the truth behind the architect. But now, holding it in her hand, Lena realized that the journey was only just beginning. Chapter 4. The Architect's Shadow. The gemstone pulsed with an eerie, soft glow in Lena's hand, casting faint shadows on the walls of the hidden room. She held it delicately, as if it might shatter with a single misstep. The stone seemed to hum, almost like it had a life of its own, its energy vibrating in the air around her. For a moment, everything else, the people in the room, the manor, the curse faded into the background. The silence that followed was heavy. Even Mira, who had been so quick to urge Lena to open the box, was now still. Her eyes locked onto the gemstone with a mix of fear and awe. "This is it," Vera said, breaking the silence. Her voice was tight, almost reverent. "The gemstone is the last piece of the puzzle. Your grandfather was right to protect it." "But what does it mean?" Lena asked, her voice strained with the weight of her discovery. "Why is it so important?" Elliot stepped forward, his gaze lingering on the glowing stone. "That gemstone is the key to the Ashford curse. Your grandfather believed that whoever controlled it could control the power behind the family's legacy, the power that has bound the Ashfords to a cycle of tragedy and darkness for generations." Lena frowned, her fingers tightening around the gemstone. "What do you mean by control the power?" Damien took a step forward, his eyes narrowing as he spoke. "The architect, whoever they are, has been manipulating the family for centuries. They've used the Ashford fortune, the power, and the influence to further their own ends. Your grandfather wanted to stop it, to break the chain. But the gemstone was always the final piece. It's what's been keeping the curse alive. Why didn't he tell me about this? Lena demanded. Why didn't he warn me? Vera sighed, looking weary. He was trying. Lena, he was trying to protect you. But there's no stopping it now. The power behind the curse, the architect's influence, it's all tied to the gemstone. It's too dangerous to leave in the wrong hands. Lena felt a chill settle over her. The gemstone was more than just a symbol. It was the anchor to everything her family's past. The curse and the architect. It had to be destroyed, but she wasn't sure how. I don't know what to do with it, Lena murmured, staring at the glowing gem. You must destroy it, Mira said, her voice resolute. That's the only way to break the curse. But there are those who will stop at nothing to get their hands on it. The architect's people are already on their way. Lena's pulse quickened. How do you know they're coming? How do you know about the architect? Mira hesitated, glancing at the others in the room before meeting Lena's gaze. I'm not just a private investigator. I've been following the Ashford family for years. The architect is not just a myth. They're real. And they've been watching you. Lena, your grandfather knew it. That's why he kept the gemstone hidden. But now that you found it, you're part of this war. You can't walk away from it. The race against time. The manor had never seemed so alive. The air thick with tension. The group moved quickly, their earlier hesitation replaced by urgency. Every step they took felt like it was leading them into a trap, but there was no choice. The gemstone had to be destroyed before the architect's agents found it. Lena's mind raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The manor's dark halls seemed to stretch on endlessly, as though they were trying to swallow her whole. The stone in her hand was warm now, the hum louder, almost as if it was alive. She could feel its power coursing through her, filling the air with a strange electricity. We need to get out of here, Lena said, her voice tense. We can't stay in the manor any longer. It's too dangerous. Elliot nodded. We'll need to find a safe place to destroy it. There's a ritual, but it requires the right place, the right elements. Your grandfather researched it, but he never had time to finish. We'll have to improvise. Damien glanced over at Vera, who seemed deep in thought. Where should we go? He asked. Vera's lips pressed into a thin line. There's a place, a church, on the outskirts of the village. It was built over a crypt, a place of old rituals. It's the only place that might allow us to complete the ritual without the architect sensing us. We'll need to move fast, Mira said, stepping toward the door. The people after this gemstone will be here soon, and they won't stop until they get it. Lena looked around at the faces of the people in the room. Some she knew. Some she had only just met, but she had no choice but to trust them. They were her only chance. The chase. The group gathered their things, moving quickly through the manor's winding halls, past the portraits of long-dead ancestors, and the rooms that whispered of secrets buried in time. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as they stepped outside, the fog thickening around them as the wind picked up. She could sense the change in the air. Something was coming. Something dark and powerful. As they made their way toward the village, Lena couldn't help but glance over her shoulder. The manor loomed behind them, its dark windows like empty eyes staring into her soul. It felt as if the house itself was trying to pull her back, to trap her in its depths. "It's too quiet," Lena muttered. "Where are they? Why aren't they coming after us?" "They're here," Elliot said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "They're watching us. The architect's people are patient. They won't strike until the time is right." The village was close now, the outlines of the church visible through the fog. It was an old stone building, its bell tower rising against the sky like a silent sentinel. But the closer they got, the more Lena felt the weight of the eyes on her, the feeling that something was just around the corner, waiting. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of footsteps behind them. Lena spun around, but the street was empty. The fog had thickened, and for a moment, she couldn't see anything but shadows. "We're being followed," Mira said, her voice low. Lena's heart raced. "How do we know it's not them? How do we know it's not?" Her voice trailed off as a figure emerged from the mist. It was a man, tall, wearing a dark coat, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He moved slowly, deliberately, his eyes glinting with something dangerous. And then he smiled. Chapter 5. The Mysterious Figure. The man who emerged from the mist was tall, his features barely visible beneath the wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. He moved with slow, deliberate steps, as though he had all the time in the world, even though Lena knew they were running out of time. The chill of the fog seemed to settle deeper into her bones as she watched him approach, every instinct telling her to run. But something in his demeanor suggested that wouldn't be an option. Lena gripped the gemstone tighter, the faint hum vibrating in her hand. The power it held was undeniable. And if this stranger was here for it, she couldn't afford to let him take it. Not now. The man stopped a few paces away, his gaze shifting from Lena to the others standing beside her. His eyes glinted with a cold, calculating intelligence. But there was something else there, something darker, more unsettling. "I see you found it," he said, his voice smooth and low. It sent a shiver down Lena's spine, but she stood her ground. "We won't let you have it," Lena said, her voice steady despite the rising fear. The man smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. It was one filled with arrogance and knowing. "You misunderstand. Miss Ashford, I'm not here to take it. I'm here to ensure you don't destroy it." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "You're working for the architect, aren't you?" The man nodded slightly. "Indeed, I am one of their agents. I've been watching you. Lena, your grandfather was a fool, and you're following in his footsteps." Her fingers tightened around the gemstone as she stepped forward. "I'm not going to let you continue the Ashford legacy of secrets and manipulation. My grandfather may have been a part of this, but I will end it." The stranger's eyes narrowed, but his expression remained unchanged. "You don't understand, do you? The Ashford legacy isn't something you can simply end. The curse is part of who you are. You carry it in your blood. Lena, there's nothing you can do to escape it." And the gemstone He chuckled darkly. It's the last piece of the puzzle. Without it, the architect's plans would have failed. But now, the cycle will continue. Lena felt a cold wave of dread wash over her. She couldn't let this man, this agent of the architect, manipulate her any longer. She had to act fast. You're wrong, she said, her voice sharper. The curse ends with me. The chase begins. Before anyone could react, the stranger moved swiftly, pulling something from his coat, a sleek silver device that emitted a high-pitched whine. The sound was so sharp it made Lena's head throb, and her vision blurred for a moment. Lena shouted, "Damien, stop him." Mira was the first to react, darting forward, but the man was already moving, faster than Lena could anticipate. With a flick of his wrist, he activated a mechanism in the device, and the air around them seemed to thicken, as if something invisible was pushing against them. Damien lunged, trying to grab the man by the arm, but it was like trying to catch smoke. The agent smiled at them, his movements fluid and practiced. "You can't stop it, Lena," he said, his voice like ice. "You were always meant to fail." Lena's pulse raced as the stranger started to back away, his eyes never leaving hers. He was baiting them, taunting them. He was testing them, waiting for their next move. He wanted them to follow him, and that's exactly what Lena intended to do. "Hakitio, Elliot, Mira, Damien, stay close," Lena ordered. Her voice was firm now, determination overtaking the fear that had threatened to paralyze her. They nodded and began to follow. But the man was quick. He had a head start, vanishing into the dense fog with alarming speed. The group moved after him, each step feeling like a race against time. Lena's thoughts were scattered, but one thing was clear. She couldn't let him escape. He knew too much. And she had the gemstone, the key to ending the curse once and for all. She wouldn't let it slip through her fingers. They ran through the streets of the village, their breaths coming fast and ragged, the sound of footsteps muffled by the fog. The man was nowhere to be seen, but Lena had a sense of where he might be headed. The church. It was the only place that made sense. The place Vera had mentioned earlier. A place tied to old rituals. A place that might hold the answers they needed. The church in the mist. The church was an ancient structure, built of weathered stone and darkened by centuries of neglect. The bell tower loomed above them, and the door creaked open in response to Lena's push. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of incense, and the faint glow of candles flickered on the altar at the far end of the room. It was quiet unnaturally so, and the atmosphere felt heavy, as though the very walls were holding their breath. Lena stepped forward cautiously, the others close behind. "We need to be careful," Mira said, her voice low. "This is where they perform the ritual. If they're here, they'll come for us," Lena finished. "We need to finish this now. If the gemstone is really the key, then this is where we end it." The sound of a door creaking open echoed through the church, and Lena's heart skipped. She turned just as the agent emerged from the shadows at the back, a smirk playing at his lips. "You really think you can stop this?" he taunted, his voice reverberating off the stone walls. "You're too late, Lena. The architect's plan is already in motion. The curse cannot be undone." Lena clenched her fists, the gemstone pulsing more intensely in her hand. The time had come. She could feel it, the culmination of everything her grandfather had worked for. The answers, the truth, it was all here, in this moment. "This ends now," Lena said, her voice strong, filled with resolve. "You won't stop me." Without another word, she rushed toward the altar, the others following closely behind. The agent made a move to stop her, but Lena was ready. With one swift motion, she held the gemstone high above her head, the glow intensifying with every passing second. The room seemed to hold its breath as Lena prepared to destroy the gemstone once and for all. But then, just as she was about to shatter it, the agent lunged at her, grabbing her wrist with a strength that surprised her. He twisted her arm, trying to force her to drop the stone, but Lena held firm. "You don't understand," the agent hissed. "You cannot escape it. You are the key to the curse. You always have been." Lena's mind spun. But one thought stood out above all others. This was it. This was her chance to free her family from the legacy of darkness they had been bound to for centuries. With a final, desperate cry, Lena pulled free from his grip and slammed the gemstone down onto the altar. Chapter 6. The Breaking of the Curse. The moment the gemstone collided with the cold stone of the altar, a violent tremor surged through the room. Lena felt the energy ripple beneath her feet, a shock wave that seemed to reverberate through the very walls of Ashford Manor. The air around them thickened, the light dimming as the room was bathed in an unnatural darkness. For a second, Lena thought the ground beneath her would crack open, that everything she had fought for her family's history, the curse, the secrets would consume her in a final burst of power. But nothing happened. The only sound in the room was the distant echo of the bell tower outside, tolling its mournful chime in the distance. Lena stood frozen, staring at the broken gemstone, its glow fading into nothingness. Her heart raced in her chest, the tension in the air still palpable. She expected something to happen, an explosion, a scream, a supernatural force. But there was only silence. The agent, still standing across from her, seemed unmoved by the lack of immediate reaction. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto hers. "You think it's over?" he asked, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think destroying the gemstone is enough to break the curse?" Lena's hands trembled as she lowered herself to her knees, the shattered remnants of the gemstone scattered on the altar in front of her. She had done it. She had destroyed the key. But still, doubt crept into her mind. Was it truly over? Or had she just opened the door to something worse? "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice strained. "The curse is broken. Your plans are finished." The agent stepped forward, his smile now twisted with a dark amusement. "The curse is not a thing you can simply erase. Miss Ashford, it is not bound to a single stone. It is bound to you, your bloodline, your very existence." Lena's breath caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" "The architect," he said, his voice cold, "was never just one person. It was a collective, an ancient order that shaped the Ashford family, controlled it, used it for their own dark purposes. The curse is a part of the family's legacy. It cannot be destroyed by simply smashing a gemstone." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. "So, what do you want from me?" she whispered. "The same thing we've always wanted," the agent said, his tone turning sinister. The power to control you, to control the Ashford legacy. The floor, beneath Lena's feet, seemed to crack open then, a deep rumble, echoing through the church. Her heart skipped a beat. The darkness that had gathered in the room began to pulse again. But this time, it wasn't just an eerie glow. It was alive, like a living thing trying to break free. You've unleashed something far worse than the curse, the agent continued, his expression darkening. By destroying the gemstone, you've freed the essence of the architect, the dark force that controls it. It's in you, Lena. It's always been in you. And now, you've just given it away to take control of everything. Lena staggered back, her mind spinning. No, I didn't. This wasn't supposed to happen. Her fingers instinctively reached for the pieces of the gemstone, still scattered across the altar, as if to put it back together, to reverse whatever had gone wrong. But it was too late. The return of the architect. In the distance, the bells of the tower began to toll louder, faster, as though the church itself was alive with a strange energy. The agent stepped back, watching her with an almost pitying gaze. It's already begun, he said softly. The curse was never meant to be broken. The architect was never meant to be defeated. You can't undo it. Lena's head swam as she fought to understand what was happening. The power in the room was suffocating, and yet, beneath it all, she felt something stir inside her. She couldn't explain it, but it was as if the darkness was calling to her, beckoning her to give in. The air around her began to swirl, the shadows shifting and warping as though they had a life of their own. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and for a moment, she felt as though she was falling into an abyss. The agent's words reverberated in her mind. The curse is in you. Lena, Mira's voice broke through the confusion. She rushed forward, grabbing Lena's arm. We have to get out of here. This place, this whole town, it's being consumed by the power you've unleashed. Lena turned to her, her eyes wide with fear. I didn't mean for this to happen. What have I done? You didn't know, Mira said urgently, pulling her away from the altar. But we need to stop it. The energy you've released is overwhelming the entire place. But it was too late. From the shadows, a figure began to materialize. A tall, looming presence, its face obscured by darkness, yet its power radiated outward like a crushing force. It was the architect. Not just a man, but something more, a being born from centuries of manipulation and darkness. A force that had shaped the Ashford family from the very beginning. The figure moved closer, its presence growing stronger, and the air seemed to grow colder with each passing second. Lena could feel its gaze on her, feel the weight of its influence pressing on her mind. Lena Ashford, the architect's voice boomed, echoing through the church. You have freed me, and now you will serve me. No, Lena whispered, trying to fight back against the overwhelming pull. I won't serve you. I won't be part of this any longer. The architect's laugh filled the room, a low, haunting sound that made her bones ache. You have no choice. Lena, your bloodline is tied to me, to the curse. There is no escaping it. Lena's vision blurred as the world around her seemed to shift. She could feel the darkness closing in, could feel the architect's power sinking into her veins, claiming her. But there was a flicker inside her, a spark of defiance. "I will stop you," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I won't be your pawn." The architect's form seemed to flicker as though unsure of how to respond. But then, with a sudden surge of power, the dark figure lunged at her, its hand reaching out to claim her. Lena closed her eyes, bracing herself for the final moment. Oh. And then, with a blinding flash of light, everything went still. Chapter 7. The Final Choice. Lena's vision swam in the aftermath of the flash of light. The room, the church, the very air around her seemed to tremble, as if the world itself had shifted. The weight of the curse, of the architect's power, pressed down on her chest like a suffocating force. She was no longer certain of where she stood. Her body felt light, disconnected, as though her very soul was being torn between two worlds. The architect's presence, once distant, now surrounded her, cold and suffocating. "You cannot escape me. Lena Ashford." The architect's voice rumbled, low and terrifying. It resonated deep in her bones, a voice that didn't just speak, but commanded. "You are the key, the final piece. The curse cannot be undone." But Lena, despite the overwhelming weight of the architect's power, stood her ground. She could feel the pulse of the gemstone within her hand, the faint echo of its energy still alive, even though it was shattered. It had been the key, the tether to the curse, but now it was a part of her, a part of her bloodline. "No," Lena said, the words coming from somewhere deep within her. She wasn't sure how she found the strength, but it was there. "I refuse to be your pawn. This curse ends here." The architect's form flickered, as though it was taken aback by the sudden surge of defiance. The shadows that had once seemed all-encompassing now seemed to waver, shifting and uncertain. "You cannot stop what has already begun," the architect said, the voice laced with venom. "You are bound by blood. Lena, your family's legacy cannot be erased." Lena closed her eyes, her mind racing. She could feel the ancient power of her family coursing through her veins, a centuries-old legacy of darkness and manipulation. But she also felt something else, something her grandfather had sought to destroy, a flicker of light, a spark of hope that had been buried beneath layers of pain and history. The gemstone had been the key to the curse, but it wasn't the only key. The true key was within her, the struggle within. As the architect's dark presence loomed closer, Lena closed her eyes, focusing on the small flicker of light within her. She could feel it pulsing, faint but undeniable. It was the part of her grandfather's work that hadn't been destroyed, the part that still remained. He had hidden it from the architect, buried it in the deepest recesses of his research. She took a deep breath, her fingers curling around the broken pieces of the gemstone. The pieces no longer hummed with power, but the energy that had once resided within them was now within her. She could feel it, the ancient energy, the connection to the curse, and the legacy that had been passed down through generations. "Lena!" The architect's voice grew louder, more insistent. You cannot fight this. You are one with the curse. You will serve me. It is your destiny. No, Lena whispered again, louder this time, the strength of her resolve solidifying. She was no longer the helpless heir to a cursed family. She was no longer the girl who had stumbled into the darkness without understanding it. She had the power to end it, to break the chain. She raised her hands, the broken pieces of the gemstone glowing faintly in her palms. The architect, sensing the shift, moved to stop her, but it was too late. Lena's voice rang out, clear and strong. I choose to break this curse. I choose to end the Ashford legacy of darkness. A brilliant light erupted from her hands, blinding and pure, flooding the room with energy. The architect screamed, a sound of fury and fear. As the light consumed them, the shadows that had once clung to the manor now seemed to evaporate, swallowed by the radiant force Lena had unleashed. For a moment, everything went still. The light, the darkness, the fear, all suspended in a single heart-stopping moment. The end of the curse. When the light faded, Lena was left standing alone in the church. The air was still, the oppressive weight of the curse gone. The room was silent, save for the distant tolling of the bell tower. The sense of power that had once filled the air was gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of calm. Lena looked around, taking in the familiar surroundings. The church, the manor, it was all the same. And yet nothing was the same. The shadows that had once haunted her were gone, dissolved in the light that had come from within her. She dropped to her knees, exhausted but relieved. She had done it. She had broken the curse. She had freed herself, her family, and the generations that had come before her. Aftermath and reflection. The others, Elliot, Vera, Damien, and Mira, were silent, watching her with a mixture of awe and respect. They had all been part of this journey, but in the end, it had been Lena who had carried the weight of her family's curse and broken it down. Elliot was the first to step forward. You've done it, Lena. You've freed us all. Lena nodded, her breath still coming in shallow gasps. I couldn't have done it without the help of my grandfather's research. But I had to make the choice. It wasn't just the gemstone. It was within me all along. Mira stepped closer, her gaze softening for the first time. You've shown us all that the curse doesn't define you. It doesn't define anyone. You chose to break free from the past, and in doing so, you've rewritten your own future. Vera, always the skeptic, finally spoke, her voice filled with awe. I never thought it would happen, but you did it, Lena. You ended it. Lena looked at each of them, her heart heavy, but filled with a new kind of strength. We all had our part to play, she said quietly, but this was my choice, my legacy to rewrite. The group stood together in the now silent church, the past finally put to rest. Ashford Manor, the place that had once been a symbol of her family's curse, now felt like just another building. Its power, its influence, had been broken, its hold on Lena severed. Epilogue, the new beginning. The fog lifted from Ashford Manor, and so did the darkness that had once clung to it. Lena walked away from the church, her footsteps steady, her mind at peace. The past had been heavy, but she had carried it, and now it was gone. She didn't know what the future held. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to walk. The curse had been broken, and with it, a new chapter began for the Ashford family, a chapter not defined by darkness, but by choice, by the freedom to create a new legacy. As Lena stepped into the light, she felt something she had never felt before: hope. The Ashford family's history had been one of shadows, but now, in the silence of the morning, Lena knew that she had broken the chains, and for the first time, she was truly free.